Hey gang, just a reminder of my new self-care coaching opportunity. The calls I've been doing during this quarantine with my clients has been a real game changer for them. Everyone's schedules are flipped upside down, and self-care is even more of a priority right now with a lot of the anxiety and feelings associated with this quarantine. So it's been really great to help my clients establish a new self-care routine that they'll be able to take back into their normal routines once we get through this quarantine. But I'm here for you all. Feel free to reach out to me to learn a little bit more, and I'll include a link in the show notes. But otherwise, let's get into the show. Hey friend, welcome to the Self-Care Isn't Selfish podcast. I'm your host, Emily Nichols. As a Whole30 certified coach, wife, busy working boy mom, and your self-care guru, I'm here to help you start putting yourself first without the guilt. Each week you'll hear motivating and practical tips on how you can create a habit of self-care through interviews with my amazing guests or quick solo episodes with me. After each episode, you'll walk away with an action plan and feel empowered to implement what you have learned into your life. So grab a cup of coffee, glass of wine, or your favorite sparkling water, and let's do this. You're listening to episode 35 of the Self-Care Isn't Selfish podcast. Today's self-care quickie tip is just about being good enough. Let good enough be good enough. I've heard Melissa Urban say this numerous times over my own Whole30 journey. And with everything going on with this pandemic right now, I think this is an opportunity for you to step back and realize that good enough can be good enough. We've heard that quote before, and I feel like sometimes people are like, well, no, you shouldn't let good enough be good enough. You need to elevate yourself. And in certain circumstances, that can be true. You don't want to settle for good enough in your relationships, your job, or your mindset. But with everything going on right now, I think sometimes we do need to settle for good enough. Sometimes I don't think we want to settle for good enough because perfectionism takes over. And there's a lot of pitfalls when thinking about getting something totally perfect. You're waiting for the perfect time to start. Well, there's never a perfect time to start. Or you keep editing something because it's never perfect. Well, you're never going to finish it in that way. Even just thinking about airing this episode today, my kids are at home. Dog is interrupting coming in the closet with me right now, which is okay. I'm just going to let good enough be good enough and let that be part of my self-care where I am just letting everything be good enough. So let's talk about 3 ways you should just let good enough be good enough. Number 1, let's talk about your self-care routine. You may have had it down solid. You got up early, you did your meditation, you moved your body, you drank your water and coffee and whatever else you included in your self-care routine. And now that is flipped upside down because your kids are at home or you're not getting up to physically go to work in the morning. You probably see a lot of people posting on social media, still get up and stick to a schedule. And, I'm trying to do that myself because I thrive on a schedule. However, I'm not being super strict about it and allowing myself some grace when, my self-care routines may be starting at 10 a.m. instead of at 5 a.m. So give yourself a little grace. Let your self-care routine be good enough. Another area to think about in being good enough is your food freedom, or if you're doing a Whole30. I've had a couple of private clients going through a Whole30 with me at this time, and they have to let good enough be good enough. You're not going to make some amazing meal at this time because maybe you just don't have the means to do that in your pantry and fridge right now. That's okay. Let good enough be good enough. If you're making a meal and you're like, man, this is not Instagram worthy, that's okay. Let good enough be good enough. Eat to just fuel your body. And if it's a random cauliflower rice with maybe an Applegate hot dog and an avocado, maybe some veggies thrown in there from your freezer, if you have some in your freezer, that's good enough. I know that's what a lot of my meals look like right now. And as far as my food freedom goes, I am enjoying some sweets. My boys have been having fun baking cookies, and I'm letting good enough be good enough by eating the cookies that I want to, but not going overboard because, as I've talked about many times, chocolate chip cookies are one of the things I love the most, and I can eat a lot and then not feel good in the long run. Speaking of food freedom and Whole30 just announced they're going to be starting a nationwide Whole30 on April 13th. And I'll be taking private one-on-one clients for that. But make sure to stay tuned into my Instagram at EmilyNichols22 to learn more about a food freedom group I will be hosting as well. Because, Whole30 may or may not serve you at this time. It could stress you out a little bit more. But talking about food freedom, I think, is really important during this time. So check out the link in my show notes and make sure to stay tuned. And lastly, when thinking about good enough, just don't compare yourself to people on social media. You see them with their kids set up for their perfect little homeschooling or e-learning setup, and they're just like, oh, we're doing this and that. And I'm like, oh, my kids used a calculator for his math this morning, and that's okay. I let good enough be good enough. I didn't want to stress him out or myself out. You see people learning new skills like, oh, I'm learning how to play an instrument, or, oh, I'm taking up minimalism. I'm straightening up everything in my house. And if you just don't have the mental or physical capacity to do that right now, let good enough be good enough. Maybe you need to stop following people on social media and take a little social media break or technology break in order to make sure that you're not comparing yourself and feeling like, I'm not doing enough. You know what? You are doing enough. Let good enough be good enough in order to take care of your mental health during this quarantine. So I hope this episode, just a quickie tip again from me, will inspire you a little bit to give yourself a little grace. Let good enough be good enough. And, maybe just give yourself a nice little hug. I'm sending you a virtual hug right now. We're all in this together. I hope you found this episode helpful for you today. So make sure to leave a rating or a review down here in iTunes. I'm letting this episode be good enough with not editing it and just, letting you hear it clear cut from here. But make sure to give me a follow over on Instagram at EmilyNichols22 and at Self-Care Isn't Selfish Podcast to get a little behind the scenes look of what I'm doing to let my self-care routine be good enough during this time. And I love you all. Keep listening and keep doing what you need to do to take care of yourselves, and we're all in this together. See you all next week. Remember, self-care isn't selfish.